everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Cyclone model rocket from R.E.A.R Rocketry. And this is kind of an unusual rocket. It launches normally like a rocket does, and then it breaks apart at ejection, and the two sections kind of helicopter down like maple leaves. For those of you who closely follow my channel, you may remember a similar model that I designed and built, and I called it Tumbleina. It works on the same principle. This one is a mini engine, so it uses 13mm motors. My Tumbleina had an 18mm motor mount to it, but otherwise they're very similar. And I would recommend trying this, especially if you don't have the parts to design your own like I did. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. Alright, and first of all, we want to make sure we have all of our parts here. Okay, so we have some stock balsa, and this will include the fins, and also some reinforcements here. Alright, and we've got another fin in here all by itself. Okay, a kit with an actual balsa nose cone. We don't see this too much anymore. And our body tube. Okay, we've got a little dowel here. And then in a small parts package we have some centering rings, engine block, launch lug, and a fin marking guide. And an engine hook there. Okay, so if we come back here, it looks like we have everything we need. The manufacturer separates this into two pieces here. So we'll have one piece that includes the nose cone and the main body tube here, along with a single fin, and they're calling that the spin unit. And then down here with the motor mount and two additional fins, they're calling that the stabilizer unit. Okay. Apparently so that when it's launching like a rocket, this is what keeps it from spinning on the way up. So it's the stabilizer there. All right, and moving on. Okay, first thing we're going to do is assemble the motor mount here. For the motor mount, we're going to need the motor mount tube, and then first of all the engine retainer hook. We'll be using those rings here in just a moment as well. Okay, so this is pre-slotted here, so just find the slot. That'll be the forward end, and the clip just pops into there like that. Okay, and then we are going to glue in the engine block, which is the smaller of the four rings in the set. Okay, and this can be done just with white glue or wood glue. Okay, now here I'm going to apply the glue to the ring rather than the tube, so that excess glue gets forced out the forward end, rather than down into the motor mount where it might interfere with the motor itself. I'm just going to place that right there, and that should be evenly seated across there and right up against the clip like that. Alright. Next we're going to cut some slots here in the other three rings. And this will allow the engine clip to still move freely, or at least freely enough that you can get the engine in and out. And so to do this, we're going to cut the inside of the ring here, and just wide enough for that engine clip. You want to cut about halfway through the thickness, so don't try and do this all at once. You peel this off in layers. then you can just use the motor mount itself to test fit this. Now my rings are also kind of tight here. One of the things you can do if you got tight rings is use your thumbnail or fingernail and kind of chamfer out the edges. And also this kind of expands the ring itself. It is really tight though. Okay, so if it's a really tight ring, then what you can do is just peel off a layer of the cardboard on the inside. Okay, so that's going to fit over the clip like that. Okay, and we'll end up with all three of them on here. Okay, so there's one. I'm going to do the same thing to the other two rings off camera and then come back. I have all of the rings trimmed, and now we're going to mark the engine mount here. And so they even give us a little bit of a ruler. Now, the forward two rings, you really don't have to put a measurement down for because one is going to go flush here, and the other one's going to come up right beside it. Okay, and in all cases, these markings are for the aft edge of the centering ring. So really, the only one we need to mark is the one here, 3/4 of an inch. That's actually kind of hard to see. I'm going to use a ruler here and check against that. Okay, so it was close. Okay, so I'm going to put this ring on, and I'm going to slide it down about to there, and then I'm going to glue that. Make sure they don't want us to do something weird with it. Yep, okay. So we can just glue these on. Okay, and they're having us put them all on from the bottom, or you can put them on from the top. It doesn't make a lot of difference. I'm just going to dry fit all three of them here for the moment. Okay, so the forwardmost ring is going to end up flush with the end. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on here. Move that up flush like that. You can even put it down on your surface and press it till it's even. Okay, and I'm going to take the next ring and do the same thing. So you don't need a lot of glue for this. Just a nice even film. That one's going to go all the way up like this. Okay, and then the last one here, I'm going to put some glue right around the line. Okay, and then I'm going to move the aft ring forward until we see the line again. It's being really grabby. There we go. Okay, and I just smooth in all the glue. and then we're going to put fillets on these. Again, they don't have to be really thick. This is a small tube and small rings. Alright, and then we'll put some up here. Alright, and then wipe off the excess glue there, and we're going to let that dry for about 20 minutes. Now the body tube was actually all not self-assembled, but it was pre-assembled in the bag, so you need to pull this apart to find the spacer, and this is the stabilizer tube, and then this is the main body tube. And we'll be coming back to these to mount the motor mount in just a little bit, but I did want you to notice that. Right now I'm going to take my fin stocks here and give them some sanding. So here I'm going to use some 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to put it on a simple sanding block here. Now I'm going to take the like pieces here, so first of all these stabilizer fins. I'm just going to quickly run these across a little bit of 220 grit sandpaper just to remove the little nubs that are left from the cutting process. Okay, it shouldn't take much. Got the one there yet. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with these two smaller pieces. And then with this little brace here, this is actually a little spacer. Alright, I'm going to set those aside for the moment. And now our motor mount should be dry enough that we can work with. So what we need to do is peel or sand off some of the cardboard here of the two forward centering rings so that they'll be able to fit inside this spacer. And again, this spacer might be inside the body tubes, so if you don't see it in the kit there, make sure check inside those tubes. It's probably stuck up there. Okay, now for this part you can use either a hobby knife or you can use some sandpaper, whichever you're most comfortable with and you have available. And the main thing is here we're shaving this. We don't want to cut very deep. tight. And one of the things I'm pretty sure will happen here when we put this in is the glue is going to bind to the fuzziness of those peeled rings, and it's going to try and lock into place. So coming back to our instructions, okay, so we want to insert this so that the middle ring is even with the bottom of this. So this is going to slide in to that point. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an applicator here and use that for the glue. Okay. And I'm going to put this back on again so I know how far. I'm going to put my glue in from the forward end. And I'll back this out just a bit. To about there. Alright, I'm going to put the glue in here. And now I'm going to push that back. Adjust that a little bit. There we go. Alright, I'm going to take just a little bit more glue then and form a fillet inside here. Just like that. Okay, and now we're going to let this dry. Now that the glue is dry on the coupler, we can install this whole thing into the motor mount tube, or into the lower body tube. Alright, so this is going to come in actually from this direction into about here. Now we need to make a mark at 11/16 from the top. Okay, so that's going to be not very far up there. So that's a 1/4 inch, which would be 12/16. So 11/16 is just below that. It's going to be right there. Okay, so this is going to go on over both rings. And I'm going to do this with trying to get glue on both sections there. So I'm going to start out here with a ring of glue. Whoa. Okay, that's not quite a ring, so I'm going to applicator and smooth that around. Okay, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue here on the coupler. Now I don't want a lot because we don't want glue smeared up and getting in the way of other stuff. Just a thin film there. Okay, find my mark, put that in, and quickly move it right up to that pencil mark because that glue is going to grab really quickly. Okay, so that's what we've got there. We're ready to mount fins onto the stabilizer section here. And so the first thing to do is simply cut out this fin marking guide. This is going to wrap around the small body tube that includes the engine mount here. And we want to line this so that the engine hook is aligned with that engine hook mark there. And this will put the fins in the proper position. Okay, now you can masking tape this, though I think I can just hold this in place. Okay, so here I'm going to put a little tick line for the fin and another one here. And And then I'm just going to make like an arrow here to know that's where my engine clip is going to go. Now they suggest taking this to a door frame to mark a line where those fins are going to go. Now I can't video from a door frame, but I do have a tube marking guide. So this is my tube marking guide. This is made by Estes, and it's basically just a whole bunch of straight lines at different depths, and so you can just pick the one that works for your particular body tube. Okay, and here we're just going to draw a line along the length for each of those two fin marks. Alright, you don't need to draw anything for the engine clip there. And then I recommend taking just a little bit of sandpaper here, and for about halfway here, so about this point down, I'm just going to scrape that a few times, and this will just give a better surface for the glue to attach. Okay, now we're going to come back to our instructions here just briefly. Okay, and we need these two pieces here. So these are our two stabilizer fins, and those are going to go on right here. Alright, and that's actually a longer base than I thought, so I'm going to go ahead and sand these all the way up the line. Okay, here I recommend using wood glue, although you can use white glue. The instructions suggest using what they call a double glue method, and I'm going to show you one that's similar. This is also a double glue method, but not quite the same one they use. So I've just got a thin film on my fin there, and I'm going to place this against my line. Okay, now I'll pull that back off, and I'm going to let that get tacky for about 30 to 60 seconds, and then come back. My glue has become tacky, so now I'm going to come back to the body tube here and reattach right at that glue. And this is going to give a faster and stronger hold. Okay, so now we're just going to sight down this and make sure we're perpendicular and straight. And we want to allow this to dry for a good at least 10 minutes, maybe even longer. Since this fin is so long and we've got a relatively small root edge, there's a lot of mechanical advantage on this, and it'll be really easy for it to bend or fall over. So be patient with this, give it a little bit of time before we go on and do the next fin. Now, something that can help with keeping your fin straight is by using a fin alignment guide. This particular one, I downloaded the plans from Thingiverse and then 3D printed it. Several manufacturers also make these, and all you have to do is buy them. Apogee makes some cardboard ones that are actually really nice. But this just fits over, and in this case, our two fins of the stabilizer have the same spacing, 120 degrees, that a three-finned rocket would have. And so I just slide this over, and that'll help keep that fin stable while it's drying there in place. Okay, now once this one is done, I will also do the other fin off camera, and then I'll come back when both fins are dry. While the fins on the stabilizer unit are drying, we can go ahead and put together the fin spars for the spin unit here. So it's these two pieces here that look like miniature ones of the fins we just put on, and then this one little triangle piece. And so we're going to make a sandwich out of these to begin with. So we're going to put a small amount of glue on one side of this. Okay, we want it covered, but we don't want it oozing here. Okay, Okay, and then this is going to go up here on the tip, and this should all align nicely. Okay, so we'll just sandwich that together and hold it for a few seconds. Alright, now there's a little bit of space in there. That's okay as long as it's not sticking out. Mainly we want this part here to be even, and we can sand. Actually, we do want that up on the angled part there. Okay, so this edge should be even as much as possible. The back edge is less important because this is where we're going to glue this onto the body. Okay, once that's in place, and it doesn't take too long if you use just a small amount of glue. Alright, then we're going to do the same thing here. And we're going to add the other piece. Now again, we want these all nice and lined up here. Alright, so I'm just going to put this all down on the flat surface so that that angle is all smooth. Okay, and now just to be sure that it doesn't move on us here, I'm going to use a small clamp to hold that in place while the glue dries. And this should only take about 5 or 10 minutes. Next, we need to draw a line down the length of the upper body tube on the opposite side of the hole. Okay, so I'm going to use my fin marking guide here again and get that roughly opposite the hole here and draw a line down. Okay, and if I look down that, that's still pretty good. And we're going to have to wait a few more minutes while the glue finishes drying on the spar assembly. My spar assembly has been glued together, and over here on the body tube I've taken some sandpaper again and roughened up where that's actually going to fit. Here I'm just going to lay this across for a moment. Okay, and we're going to hold it up here to this diagram and see if we're close. It looks pretty close to 15 degrees. Now they do recommend taking a piece of sandpaper here, wrapping it around the body tube, and then dragging this whole thing across it so that the root edge of the whole spar assembly is curved to the body tube, and this will give it a better adhesion. Now I'll attach this in pretty much the same way we did with the other fins. So we'll put a layer of glue on this. Alright, make sure you get the right end of the tube here. Okay, so we'll just put that on, and again the edge of the angle here should be flush with the edge of the tube. Alright, I'm going to bring that back up, let that get tacky for about 30 seconds, and then come back. Okay, my glue has become tacky again, so we'll go ahead and put this back on. Alright, make sure that it is nice and straight and aligned along the tube and the fin line there. Okay, and perpendicular to the tube. Alright, now we're going to let this dry as well. And when we come back, we'll add fillets to all of the fins. The glue on the fins is dry, and we're ready to put on the fillets. I'm going to grab a tissue or paper towel here to have handy to wipe my fingers on. Now we want fillets to be strong, but in this case we also want them to be light. So I'm going to try and keep these as minimized as I can so I don't change the balance that was designed into the rocket here. I usually do facing fins at the same time. So just run the glue in, and then we're just going to wipe off the excess here. Try to avoid getting glue up here on the coupler. I'll turn this around. And now I'm going to allow that to dry in a horizontal position so the glue does not run to one end or the other. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. And we do have a little bit of a gap there because I didn't quite get enough roundedness sanded in, but that's okay. We'll just fill it in now. Alright, and just as I did with the stabilizer section, this will also be set aside to dry in a horizontal position. The fillets are dry on all of the pieces that we've put on so far, and the stabilizer looks pretty good there. Alright, that also looks good. So now we're going to take the main fin here, and it's going to get inserted between those two pieces. So this, and we got to make sure we got it oriented right. So this is going to go in like this, and will be pushed all the way up to the end there, and then everything should be flush like that. Okay, so you go ahead and make sure that everything fits before we glue it here. All right, so our leading edge should be here, parallel with the grain. You're going to want to have a couple of clothespins or clamps handy. I've got these little clamps here. And then we're just going to take and put on a thin film of glue where the fin is going to attach. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back on for just a moment. And I'm going to take my pencil here and just make a little tick mark on each side of the fin so that I know where the reinforcements are. I'm just going to put a little bit of a mark here as well, and that will give me a guide for the glue. We don't want a big thick film, because then we'll just end up with glue oozing everywhere. Okay, and now we're just going to put this back in. You can even spread these supports just a little bit. Okay, and then reposition so that we're back where it should be there. So up against the forwardmost edge there. And basically everything down here on the bottom should be even with each other. Okay, and once you've got that the way you want it, then take your clothespins or your clamps. Just clamp everything into place here. Okay, and we're going to let that completely dry for about 20 minutes. While we're waiting for the fins to dry, we can go ahead and cut this dowel here, and this is going to act as a fin weight to change the center of gravity a little bit. And what we need to do here is just line this up with the end here. So this is the forward end up here. Alright, and we're going to cut in this line. And this should give us pretty close to a 15-degree angle. Now this is not balsa, so it's not going to cut quite as easily. Okay, that looks pretty close. And at this point, I think our glue is done here. So this should be nicely embedded. Okay, and then we're going to glue this dowel onto the aftmost end of the fin here. So that's going to go on like that, and the angle here just gives it a nice transition there. Okay, so instead of trying to put glue on the dowel, I'm going to put glue on the fin here. I'm just going to mark a little spot where that's going to go. And like we've done with previous gluings here, we want to keep just enough glue to make a film here, but not without making blobs all over the rocket. Alright, that one's going into blob range there. Okay, so now we're just going to put that on. Make sure it's centered here all along the fin. Alright, now I'm going to let that dry and we'll come back in a few minutes. While the glue is drying on the dowel, we can go ahead and treat the bottom of the nose cone here. So they want us to put a layer of glue on this and just kind of smear it around. And this is to help protect the balsa from hot ejection gases when the ejection charge goes off. Alright, now we don't want it up here on the shoulder yet because we're not ready to glue it in. Okay, but something just like that, and I'm just going to prop this up here. And then we'll wait for it to dry as well. The glue on my dowel is not completely dry, but it's dry enough that we can handle it here. And so we can do some final assembly. So our launch lug is going to go right along the base of the fin. Okay, so I'm just going to apply a bead of glue to it. And this is going to go right in the corner edge here. You can do it on either side. The aft end of the launch lug should line up with the aft end of the body tube there. Just give that a couple of seconds to grab. And then for the nose cone, we're going to put a little bit of glue here in the tube. Now we don't want too much, just an even film here. And that's too much. If we get too much in there, it may affect the weight. Now fortunately, we don't have to worry about motors getting stuck since there are no motors in the upper part of this. Okay, and then we'll just take our nose cone here, put that in, give it a little twist to seat it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and let all that dry some more. Now the instructions don't call for a fillet on the launch lug, but I'm going to give one anyway, at least on the body tube side. I'll go ahead and leave the fin side alone. Again, the instructions indicate that weight is a very contributing factor to the flight of this particular rocket, so I'm going to try and keep the weight down. So here's the finished rocket. The instructions indicate that you shouldn't paint or fill this until you've launched it at least once to see how the aerodynamics work. Now, you could go ahead, if you wanted to, add sanding sealer and add paint to this. The worst that it's going to do is this will turn into a tumble recovery rocket instead of helicopter. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and leave this alone for now and end my video here and give this a test flight before I do paint it. I hope you had fun building this with me, even though it's kind of got some weird engineering to it. It is a relatively simple one to build. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.